Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. He's talking to today's industry leaders and entrepreneurs about the people side of their business.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Best Team Wins podcast, where we're featuring entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to outstanding results. My name is Adam Robinson, and for the next few minutes, I'll be your host as we talk about how to build your business through better hiring. This week's episode coming to you right after a week in Las Vegas, Nevada at the National Auto Dealers Association Conference. Over 10,000 people in attendance representing the automotive retail industry in the U.S. and Canada and around the world. And I wanted to give my thoughts on that conference. I mean, the automotive industry is the second largest industry sector by dollar volume behind residential real estate. It is a massive economic engine here in this country, responsible for the employment of millions upon millions of individuals. And so the health of this industry is directly related to the health of the U.S. economy. And as it relates to the people side of the business, there were some key trends I picked up on while I was out there this week, and I wanted to share those with you today. And there were really four of them. Number one, the human capital conversation in this industry, which has really never been had before in a serious way, is now happening. That's the first thing. Second, pay plans in this industry and career paths in this industry are changing. The notion of what it means to be in automotive retail can now be transitioned from perhaps an industry of last resort through to a career choice that people want to take a look at. And then finally, I want to talk about the role of women in the automotive industry and some exciting things that Automotive News was doing there last week. But first, the broader HCM conversation in automotive retail. The industry, as of a couple of years ago, was starting from a standing start. The people side of the business was not really something that was managed intentionally and is core and critical. And I can report to you now that the most progressive and leading dealers are thinking about it, and they're doing something about it now. So whereas a couple of years ago, it would have been a struggle really to get the attention of dealers to really make the investment of time or resources to improve this part of their business, now dealers are actually doing it. And the conversations I had tell me that dealers understand it starts with their employment brand. I mean, everything about this industry is changing, from how we buy automobiles to how we finance them to how they're serviced. Carvana and other leading new economy companies are figuring these things out. You can order a car online, have it delivered to your house, have the entire thing done online. And new car franchise dealers, typically have traditional and offline processes, but that's changing. The one thing I think dealers understand has never changed is the people side of this business. I mean, we are still suffering in automotive retail from murky career paths, high variable comp pay plans, and long hours, 60, 70, even 80 hours a week in some of these jobs. And I think the industry realizes now increasingly that that's just not sustainable. The good news for dealerships, as I'm understanding it, is that they've seen this movie before. So, Google has really, truly upended the way that retailers market to consumers. Instead of, buying ads on third-party lead gen sites, they're now understanding that search engine optimization is the key to reaching consumers. The content's got to be relative. It's got to be directed at them. It's got to be very, very specific. It's got to be video-based, increasingly, and updated to be constantly relevant. Well, on the job side, it's no different. For 20 years, what this industry and most other have done is been to post jobs on job boards and pray for candidates, the post and pray method, as I like to call it. That's changed now. I think, Google, having entered the market with the Google Jobs product 6+ months ago, has the potential to change the way that everyone organizes the technology that powers their career site and their people practices. And automotive retail is positioned to take full advantage of that because, after all, I would think this industry is the most sophisticated user of digital marketing, consumer-facing B2C digital marketing at scale out there. So all of the things that dealers have learned how to do over the last 15 years to be SEO optimized for their consumer brand to sell cars and service can now all be applied to the people side of their business. And that really leads me to the conversations that I had with a number of dealers this week. And really it falls on three main areas. Number one, more dealers are deciding that this is important. They're trying to be intentional about this. So there's a greater realization that these things matter, number one. Number two, dealers are doing something about it. So they're not just deciding that it's important, they're actually putting systems and process in place. And what I am really most excited to see is the elevation of the HR leader role within the automotive industry. I just looked at some reporting here at Hireology we have internally and saw that only about 1 in 3 automotive groups have anyone dedicated to the people practices at the store or at the group. 1 in 3. That means 2/3 of this industry has yet to hire someone that's responsible for human capital at the group. And that, for me, is a huge opportunity to create competitive advantage for dealers that get in front of this. Of course, everyone was asking me, where do I start? My answer is, start with your employment brand. It's not, hey, let's build a strong culture. That's a boil the ocean problem. Where do you even start with that? My recommendation in the conversations I had this week is that dealers start with their employment brand. It's fully controllable. It is, your employment brand is what your local market for labor thinks of you as an employer, and you can absolutely control that with a better career site, with better content, with video-based content, and all kinds of other assets that increase the interest level of folks considering this job. In 2017, Hireology, in conjunction with Cox Automotive, one of the largest software vendors in the automotive space, did a joint study and found that just over 1% of people would consider a career in automotive retail. Right, 1 out of 100. That's pretty bad. The top interest levels were at the retail, at somewhere just north of 32%, and in finance at somewhere in the high 20s. And my conversations this week with dealers was basically saying, look, you guys have everything you need to build a sound recruiting foundation. 32% of the market for labor would consider a job in retail or finance. Well, what is a car dealership but a retail environment, highly specialized retail environment with an in-house finance operation? I mean, the opportunity is there to go from 1% to 30%, and that's really a marketing problem. That's not exactly a recruiting issue. But the things that hold us up in this industry are threefold. Number one, we don't have defined career paths. Number two, we don't have pay plans where you know what you're going to make. And three, the hours are terrible. What I found, though, this week, for the first time in our 4 years of going to this conference as Hireology, was that the pay plans are actually starting to shift. Career paths are starting to be defined and emerge and really sold as part of the recruiting process. And hours are being reduced. The magic number is 45 hours a week, more than 44 hours a week in a retail environment, and turnover starts to increase. I'm seeing evidence that dealerships today are doing more to manage more people on the roster to shorter shifts. I think that's fantastic. I'm also seeing an increase in the percentage of pay plans that are base pay plus team bonus versus full ratchet commission plans as we think about these car sales jobs in the traditional sense. All of that's good. These are all good things that I think are going to drive this industry forward and elevate it in the eyes of the market as a great place to work. So all of that's great. It is already hard enough to be in the car business, and so much of what dealers and their teams do is out of their control. I mean, this is not an industry where there's a ton of control over market dynamics. You don't control interest rates. It's out of your control. You can't control gas prices. The only thing you really control is who you put on your payroll. And all of the levers for operating efficiency in this industry have been pulled. And the theme of the day in automotive retail is margin compression. Industry leaders like Dale Pollack from Viato and Cox Automotive were out there this week really beating that drum. The internet is really driven transparency. That transparency has driven price compression as consumers walk into stores armed with better data. And that margin compression is hurting profitability. As profitability gets hurt, dealers have been looking at, certainly over the last 3 to 5 years at how to shave, percentage points off their marketing budget or how to turn cars in their inventory a day faster. But meanwhile, for the average dealership, $3.5 million of their cost structure is tied up in their payroll. I mean, it's more than 50% of the gross margin they drive is consumed by payroll. And as I like to say, most dealerships have a better process for buying office supplies cheaply than they do for hiring the right person for their job. 100% of who they put on their payroll, that is under their control. Unlike everything else in their business, the payroll is on them. And I think they're waking up to the fact that that's a real opportunity here. It is, in fact, I think the last untouched return on investment available to dealers is to focus on the people side of their business. So pretty exciting stuff. The other thing, and I'll end with this here on my recap, my NADA recap, is that the role of gender diversity in automotive retail is become elevated as a topic in the industry. I mean, only 1 in 10 or 12 roles in the store are filled by women, right? Yet the female attrition rate in sales jobs and dealerships is 90% annually, which means for every 10 women that go into sales roles in this business, only 1 is left at the end of the year. And there are a variety of reasons for why that happens. But I was just so excited to see that Automotive News and their special reporting on this topic, gender diversity in automotive retail, through their Project XX writing, got a ton of traction this year at the show. In fact, I was privileged to be on a special live panel at the conference about Project XX and got to speak about the heightened awareness, of course, with the Me Too and Time's Up movements being front page news in the United States on a weekly basis, and this topic being at the forefront of everyone's minds in the employment business. To see this front and center in automotive retail was very encouraging. Because after all, 2/3 of the car buying decisions in the United States are made by females. Yet they are so grossly underrepresented in this business. It presents a huge opportunity for dealers to both modernize the way they run these stores to make them inclusive for everyone, but also presents an opportunity to drive competitive advantage because, of course, if you're better at this than everyone else, you will sell more cars. You will have higher retention of customers. There's customer SAT scores will show higher levels. Your employee retention will go up. All of the good things that we know research show happen when you have a diverse workforce. All of those benefits accrue to the dealers that get this right. And I think for the next 3 to 5 years, dealers have an opportunity to be first to the game there and drive real operating advantage in their markets. So quick recap of my recap: NADA, Las Vegas this week, 4 topics and themes that really stuck out with me. Number 1, dealers are talking about human capital in the automotive industry. It's being increasingly recognized as a lever that needs to be pulled in an area of the business that needs to be invested in. Second, pay plans are changing. The industry, I think, in the next 5 years will be a majority base pay industry. That's a big shift from now. It's probably more like 5 to 10%. Career paths are being defined. That's the third trend. This is increasingly being looked at as an industry where you can have a career. I mean, after all, where else can you make 4 to 5% above the national average for similar jobs? Work on the cutting edge of transportation and mobility as a service. Work for an entrepreneurial business that's typically the bedrock of the community, the largest sales tax generator in the community, and certainly a provider of stable jobs in many cases for generations, going back a century. And then finally, gender equality in automotive and the Project XX initiative led by Automotive News. Absolutely an exciting thing to be happening and an important moment for automotive retail. So thanks for tuning in to my recap on NADA 2018. You've been listening to Adam Robinson here, your humble host of the Best Team Wins podcast, where we're featuring entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. Please check out my site, www.thebestteamwins.com, for more on these topics, or to pick up the book, The Best Team Wins, here or on Amazon.com. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. You can find out more information about Adam and his book, The Best Team Wins, Building Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, at thebestteamwins.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.